In today's lecture, we are going to discuss Python for loop in detail. We have already discussed while loop and decision making statements also. Now we will discuss for loop. In Python, just like while, the for loop is used to iterate over a set of statements. However, the for loop iterates over a sequence of numbers represented by a list, tuple, string, or other sequential objects. Suppose I want to traverse entire list or a tuple or a string, then for that purpose, for loop is preferably used. And its journal syntax is for val in sequence, where val is the counter variable. It augments automatically to the next value until the entire sequence is processed. Sequence means it can be either a list, a string, a tuple, dictionary, etc. So a sequence can be anything within certain range or a specified list, tuple, or a string. After that, we specify colon in order to mark that some statements are going to start after it. Then we'll put indentation, that means pressing the tab space, and then we'll write statements. There can be one or many statements as per our programming need. So this is the journal syntax of for statement. For val in sequence, colon, statements. Now, let's see its flowchart, how it works. For val in sequence, then first item from the sequence will be picked. Automatically, it will process these statements inside it, then execute statement, and it will go back. That means it will fetch the next item from the sequence. If the entire sequence will be exhausted, no item will be left in the sequence, then for loop will be exited. For example, I have a list of numbers 10, 20, 30, and 40. Initially, it will pick 10. Let's suppose it will print it and then will go back and will augment automatically to the next element 20. Fine. Then it will print 20 and augment to the next element automatically. That means 30. Then it will print 30. After that, it will augment to the next element 40. It will print it 40 and automatically it will augment to the next element. Since there is no element left, then it will exit automatically when the entire list of numbers will be exhausted. So this is how for loop iterates one by one, picking elements from the given sequence. Now let's understand the same through a programming illustration. Suppose I have this list of numbers and we have marked it as marks is equal to this list of numbers. And how will I use it in programming? I'll write for I in marks. For I in marks, after that, there is written print I. That means it will first pick, I will first pick first element from the marks list and then print it. After that, it will go up and iterates to the second element, which is 43, and then print it. Then 65, 42, 73, 51, and 24. And the entire list will be printed. It augments to the next element automatically. And we need to remember this. We need to put indentation and colon in the for loop also, just like while loop and if statements. So this is how for loop traverses through a list of elements. Let's see another example. Suppose I have a list of strings, then how to process them. Suppose I have this list of strings, cities with values Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, and Kolkata. Then for city in cities, I'll print current city colon city. So this variable city will first pick the first element from the cities list, which is Delhi. current city Delhi, after that Mumbai, Chennai and Kolkata will be printed. And if I want to process a single string, that can also be processed character by character by using this way: for C in program, print C. That means, first of all, it will print only P, then R, O, G, R, A, and then M. That means it augments to the next element automatically. We can process an entire list or a list of strings or a single string and fetch its elements or traverse its elements one by one using for loop. We don't need to put I++ or C++ just as we do in C or C++ or Java. We just need to write these statements, and this increment statement works automatically. So it's very simple to use for loop in Python language. Now, what if I want to process it like for loop in C or C++ or Java? And for that purpose, we have a special function called range function. As it is clear from its name, range function is quite useful in Python programming language. It is used to generate a sequence of numbers, and its syntax is range, and it is having 3 arguments: start, stop, and step size. Just like we do in C or C++. For I is equal to 0, I less than 5, I plus in C or C++ or Java. The syntax is same like this. But here we have a new function called range function, and it is having 3 arguments. First is start, which is similar to this initialization. Then stop, that means the condition where this iteration should stop, and step size. It can be either 1, 2, 3, or in negative also -1, -2, -3. So it depends upon our need what we want to mention the step size. So let's discuss range function in detail. It is having 3 arguments. So what if we provide only 1 argument, 12? Range 12. That means it will generate numbers from 0 to 11 automatically. Its first number will start from 0 and will go to the number mentioned, 1 number less than the mentioned number. If I have mentioned 12, then it will go up to 11 because it has started from 0. So total numbers are 12, but it starts from 0 and will end at 11. So the range is specified to be 0 to 11. That means it generates number up to but excluding last number in the specified range. By default, it starts from 0 and goes up to 1 less than the specified number. I have already told you about this. If I specify range 12, that means it will start from 0 and will go up to 11. If I specify range 2, 12, that means this is the start point and this is the end point. This is start. The iteration will start from 2 and will end up to 12. 12 means 11 because 1 less than the specified number. So in this sequence of numbers to be displayed, starts from 2 and ends at 11. That is, the first argument represents the beginning number and the second argument represents the total range. Now the third option. What if we specify all the 3 arguments, range 2, 20, 2. In this function, the start point is 2, end point is 20, and the increment point is also, step size is also 2. That means the range will go as like this: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. That means the loop will go like this. We can also, this function also represents directly. We can fetch only even numbers by setting range function as 2, 20, and 2. That means we have already specified step size as 2. That means the points, the number will increment twice and we'll get an entire list of even numbers. So this is how range function can be used. Now let's understand through a programming illustration. Suppose if I write range 12, this function is on interpreter mode. This program has been implemented on interpreter mode because we have mentioned over here prompt range 12. If I press enter, it will display range 0 to 12. That is the specified range of this function. If I write list range 12, because I want to print that list, I have put range function inside as an argument of list function. List range 12, so it will print all the elements starting from 0 up to 11. And if I specify list range 2 comma 12, then the starting point is 2 and the ending point is 12. You can see it is starting from 2. Here it was starting from 0 because we didn't mention the initial point over here. So automatically it starts from 0. But if I mention the start point, it will start from 2. Now list range 2 comma 20 comma 2. Now that means it will start from 2 and will go up to 20 because it doesn't reach to the last point. It reaches one number less than the mentioned number. So it will go up to 18 and the step size will be 2. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. So it will generate an entire list of even numbers. So this is how range function works. It is very important to understand range function. Next is how to use range function in for loop. It's very simple to use with for loop also. We have a list called language. This is a list of strings where language strings are Python, Java, and C++. And if I want to access it by using range function, I can do this for I in range length of language. So length will determine the length of this list, which is 3. And that means range 3. It has specified the numeric value 3. That means it will access all the 3 elements starting from 0, 1, and 2. Automatically, I already told you in the list chapter, 0, 1, 2. This is the indexing of numbers or values or strings. Whatever the list values, the starting index is always 0. Then the next element's index is 1 and then 2 and so on. That means now with range function, the elements will be accessed index-wise. So after writing print I like language I, that means language 0. Initially, the value of I is 0, which is Python. So it will print I like Python. Then automatically it will go to the next index, I like language 1, which is Java. So it will print I like Java. And in the third iteration, loop will augment to 2 and it will print I like language 2, which is C++. So this statement will be printed. So this is how we can use range function in the for loop. It's very simple.